Hello, I'm Richard Mayberry. My Uncle Eric books are in the form of a series of letters from an economist to his niece or nephew named Chris. Chris is 14 and beginning to think about the larger world beyond home, family, and school. For the first time, Chris is reading the daily newspaper and encountering subjects such as economics, law, geopolitics, business, and investments. Chris is intelligent enough to realize an understanding of these subjects is extremely important for every individual, but doesn't have the foggiest idea where to begin or how to separate the wheat from the chaff. As an economist, Uncle Eric deals with these subjects every day. Chris writes to him asking question after question. Uncle Eric writes back, doing his best to answer in ways that someone who knows nothing about these subjects can understand. Uncle Eric knows Chris will receive some of this information from school courses, so he concentrates on information schools omit. As you read over Chris's shoulder, much of what you will encounter will be fresh to you. You and Chris together will be exploring a whole new world. I hit on the idea of writing these books in the form of letters to a young person when I was a teacher in the 1970s. I was trying to explain inflation, recessions, depressions, currencies, and other economic subjects to my teenage students, and I just wasn't getting anywhere. So I began writing them letters. I'd write one letter for each topic and let the whole class edit the letter over and over until the students had taught me how to explain the topic in a way they found easy to understand. They'd say, "We don't understand this," or "What does that mean?" and I'd have to keep rewriting until they got it. I'd been told by my college economics professors that these subjects were much too difficult even for adults, much less teenagers. But I believe the only reason any subject is hard to learn is that it's not taught well. I think it's but a slight exaggeration to say anyone can learn anything if the teacher and the learning environment are suitable to that person's needs. One of the first lessons my students taught me was to avoid abstractions and stick to the concrete. A person's ability to remember examples that are concrete is vast. And if I was going to teach abstractions, I might as well stay home because the students would not remember them. I wanted to teach things that would stick with them for the rest of their lives. Here's another thing. Virtually all schools everywhere on earth are owned or controlled by government agencies. So almost everyone in the world graduates from high school or college holding views that are strongly statist, and most don't even know there are views that are non-statist. To help introduce you to what you were never exposed to in high school or college, Uncle Eric is a non-statist who sees things through the eyes of Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Patrick Henry, and the other American intellectual leaders of 1776. Uncle Eric does his best to stay absolutely faithful to the principles of 1776, whether discussing economics, geopolitics, law, business, or any other subject. The Uncle Eric books might be your only chance to be exposed to a non-statist view. Nowhere in these books will you find a kind word for Karl Marx or Lenin or Stalin or any of their admirers or their ideas and convoluted schemes that dominate our lives today. I think you'll be very surprised at the wisdom of the American founders, especially the wisdom found in the third Uncle Eric book, Whatever Happened to Justice. I think this book may be what I was put on earth to write, and I can assure you a lot of people don't want you to read it. The first collection of letters I wrote back in the 1970s eventually became the Uncle Eric book called Whatever Happened to Penny Candy. And over a period of about 23 years, it was followed by another 10 books, all of them dedicated to helping people learn what they probably did not get in high school or college. I've often heard people who have college degrees, including master's degrees and PhDs in economics, say, "You know, I read those Uncle Eric books, and for the first time in my life, I understand economics." The Uncle Eric books can be read in any order, but I believe you'll get the most from them if you read them in the suggested sequence, which you can find at the top of this page. The first Uncle Eric book, which is called Uncle Eric Talks About Personal, Career, and Financial Security, explains how a person's mind works, how the individual understands his or her world. Uncle Eric shows how Chris can recognize information that's important and bypass that which isn't to make better decisions and achieve success. The second Uncle Eric book, Whatever Happened to Penny Candy, is a fast, clear, and fun explanation of the economics Chris needs to adapt to our fast-changing world. Subjects include inflation, investment cycles, velocity, money demand, recessions, business cycles, and many others. The third book, Whatever Happened to Justice, is about law. There's hardly anything more important to your life than law, and Uncle Eric helps Chris explore America's legal heritage, including crucial subjects such as contract law and property law. In the fourth book, Are You Liberal, Conservative, or Confused?, Uncle Eric explains political labels such as liberal, conservative, left, right, moderate, Democrat, Republican, socialist, libertarian, and others. He describes their economic policies and the plans their promoters have for your money. The fifth book, Ancient Rome, How It Affects You Today, explores what has happened in the past when societies have become warfare-welfare states and asks, are we headed for fascism like ancient Rome? History may never repeat exactly, but Uncle Eric shows that it repeats closely enough to learn valuable lessons from it. The sixth Uncle Eric book is called Evaluating Books. What would Thomas Jefferson think about this? Most books, magazines, news stories, TV, and movies are slanted against the principles of America's founders because that's what the writers were taught in high school and college. The sixth book explains how to identify the bias so that you can make informed choices about what to read or view. The seventh book, The Money Mystery, is about a hidden force that affects your career, business, and investments. This force is called velocity, which means the speed at which money changes hands. You will meet very few brokers, financial advisors, or other financial experts who understand velocity, especially its 3 stages, but you will understand after Uncle Eric explains. The eighth book is The Clipper Ship Strategy. Conventional wisdom says that when the government expands the money supply, the money descends on the economy in a uniform blanket, but this is wrong. The money is injected into specific locations, causing hotspots or cones. Uncle Eric explains a system for tracking and profiting from the cones and for avoiding being a victim when a cone collapses. The ninth Uncle Eric book, called The Thousand-Year War, explains the 10-century war in the Mideast the U.S. government entered into on the side of the Europeans about 2 centuries ago. First published in 1999, the Thousand-Year War predicted the events that began unfolding on September 11, 2001, when the World Trade Center came down. Uncle Eric presents dozens of maps and other illustrations that show what's been happening. You will be amazed. The 10th and 11th books are World War I, The Rest of the Story and How It Affects You Today, and World War II, The Rest of the Story and How It Affects You Today. Uncle Eric explains how the explosion of the battleship Maine in Havana Harbor in 1898 was the beginning of a chain reaction that led to the 2 world wars, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and today's so-called War on Terror. More importantly, Uncle Eric explains how and why this chain reaction is continuing and why it will be a major factor in Chris's future. Now let me give you a warning. After you finish reading the Uncle Eric books, you will know what others don't. You'll often make a comment at a party, and a crowd of eager listeners will gather around to hear the fascinating things you're explaining. You will have to decide how many of their bubbles you will burst. Will you tell them everything you know, or will you hold some back? So that's a quick overview of the Uncle Eric books. Now I hope you will continue on to the videos of sample chapters for each individual book.